I'm doing fine, how are you? And since we couldn't play Desperados, I'm going to go with a text-based and choose your own adventure here. That is also about Western themes. So yes. Thin Star by Alan Keyes. So this is just going to be a lot of talking and reading. So, dawn creeps steadily towards the sleepy city of San Francisco. A host of ships lie at anchor with their sails furled as they bob in the bay. You turn from the ocean view as you reach the top of the stairs and find white tufts of woolly sheep drifting up the lush green hillsides to the east. Sunlight slowly approaches the uncluttered mountains until a golden sheen illuminates a crown of glory against an endless blue sky. Down below, the creak of metal-rimmed wheels rise up as the city awakens to a chorus of horses and carts. A hint of rain hangs heavy in the air and promises to wash every corner of the sprawling expanse clean. Because there's two-person, I suppose. I think. And it's a nice way of talking. A fine morning, or it would be if not for the impatient whisk of a hangman's snooze. The crime is murder and the sentence is hanging by the neck until death. The execution to be carried out this day, April 23rd, 1867. A stiff-shirted deputy intones as the noose is slipped around your neck. The lawman's pepperbox pistol remains holstered, but his fingers keep seeking the grip. Grip because he knows as well as you that desperate people do desperate things. At the far corner of the platform waits an ominous figure, a hangman in flat black leather hood that refuses to shift in the early morning breeze. His hard eyes are fixed upon you, and his hand stays poised atop a simple lever. Oh, I'm very telling. Beneath you, the trapdoor gives out a low groan as if in morbid anticipation. The creak of rawhide about your wrist echoes the sentiment all too readily. A terrible stillness settles in. This is it. The end. As if hearing that weary thought, a black-clad priest steps close with a Bible in hand. "My child, you stand upon the final threshold," the priest asked with profound gentleness. The clerical collar about his neck is crisp, white, and relatively speaking, tight about his throat. "Will you renounce Satan and in all his guises?" Say nothing. I'm innocent. Father, I have been wrongfully convicted. The prosecution didn't even present prima facie evidence. Yes, I do. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed by thy name. Struggle against my bonds. All due respect, Padre. Now's not the time for making enemies. Okay. yeah. All due respect, Padre, now's not the time for making enemies. That's our choice. The priest blinks hard, the Bible closes with a snap and he backs away. The hangman coughs out a chuckle, then pulls the lever. It is a short drop followed by a long slide. The noose never snaps, although you strain in vain against that moment. At last you tumble to halt amid a dusty cellar. At the far end, a hint of morning light leaks in around a simple door, and silhouettes a man in tidy greys that match his thinning hair and broad mustache. Upon his chest rests a simple thin star that marks him as the only law in most parts of California, a marshal. He leans against the timbered wall as though he hadn't care in the world. An ivory inlaid pistol is holstered at his hip, and a rather large knife balances out the low rig. That's not a knife. The man idly watches as you lurch to your feet and doesn't raise an eyebrow when you pull the noose off. That length of rope snakes down to the ground at your feet, and only then does your full breath return. The stranger's voice is edged with dark humor as he begins to speak. I heard you with the priest. Quite a tongue on you, and that might just save your neck. I'm Marshal James, and there's a need in territories for stalwart folk who'll wear a badge and get things done. Folks like you. Let's see, you perked my interest. You could have just asked me first. If this means I'll be able to practice medicine again, then sign me up. Wait, we were a doctor? You perked my interest, go on. Right to the point, good. I've got breakfast to get to, the marshal says evenly. The marshal methodically extracts and plugs a pipe full of tobacco as he begins. See, what I'm giving you is a chance to not get stretched. There's a county out in Nevada that's in a heap of trouble. I've sent a few marshals their way, but something always happens to them. And yeah, by something I mean they've run off or come back in a bind box. A sulphurous crackle fills the air as Marshal James strikes a match and lights his pipe. In the sudden light you can see hard features and rough skin earned from a lifetime under the open sky. Even his graying hair has a feel of granite about it. The only contrast lies about the man's neck, a slim red silk tie of fashionable cut that is a definite deviation from his trail-worn attire. Blue smoke spills out from the marshal's pipe as he puffs. Now, if you take up the star, you'll head out to Lander County in Nevada and serve the people there for a term of 4 years. After that, I'll let you go wherever you want. Sound good? I've been legally declared dead then. Have I been legally declared dead then? Do you need my signature to take? No, we are going with... Let's just nod. I'll take that as a yes, Marshal James considers a moment as he idly puffs out a cloud of blue smoke. The soft scrape of boots is heard from the scaffolding above. A steady whisk of an all too familiar rope being coiled up follows hard on its heels. Marshal James settles back by a narrow seam of sunlight that flickers through a rap in the wall and gives you a little nod. Glad we understand each other. I might seem a mite hard, and I am, but I ain't flicking my whip solely, and on account of needing a teen star out in Lander County. You remember who you killed? That deed what got you here. That's nice to hear. Hopefully this is entertaining. I did not kill that man. I did not kill that woman. I killed that man only because he would have killed me first. I killed that man only because he would have killed me first. Well, let's go with that. Your lawyer argued that rather well, the marshal notes. But the jury was bought and paid for. There were powerful people who needed to see you swing. Now, revenge is a messy thing, and so I expect that they won't stop until they ravage everything you hold dear. That is, unless someone intervenes. I take it that someone means you. You see anyone else here? The marshal asks. The sun continues to rise and the day has nearly breached the last of the night. Little bars of sunlight continue to spill through the cracks in the walls until the shadows between begin to retreat. Now, you're going to have to leave the state. Heck, you are going to have to leave behind your former life. But I've made special arrangements considering that. The marshal promises as clear as the coming day. What you leave behind will be kept safe. Now, you might be inclined to think that I'm holding a hostage, and I expect you'd be half right. This way, I can be sure you won't just run off into the wild, and because of that, you won't be sleeping atop Old Boot Hill come nightfall. So, why don't you tell me what exactly I'll be looking after of yours here in California? Well, let's see. My legal practice for doctors, my hospital for lawyers. Let's go with the family, of course. I know who you mean, and as I said, I'll be looking after them, Marshal James promises. Now, I've got a badge here. He holds up a simple 5-pointed star, flattened thin. Across the front of it has been etched with the word Marshal. Along one point of the dual silvery metal there is a trace of a dark stain that doesn't seem likely to scrub clean. With a flick of fingers, he tosses it to you. The star's just thin. It won't stop a bullet. Hell, it won't even cut a steak. It's just a hunk of metal in someone's chest, Marshal James says. The marshal who wears it has to make it shine by their own hand. So tell me, what are you best at? Let's see, we have gunfighting, sharpshooting, brawling, riding, surviving in the wild, being a lawyer, building things. blowing things up with gunpowder or nitro... persuading, intimidating. Working from sun up to sundown. Let's see. Gunfighting, sharpshooting. Not giving up. Let's go with that. Resolve very greatly increased. Oh, okay. Then we can... we... Gunfighting? Gunfighting greatly increased. And... let's see... let's take riding too. Okay, we can take riding increased. What have you dabbled with? Persuading people. Persuasion slightly increased. Never giving up can be the most important thing a marshal does. Aside from dodging bullets and talking idiots down from being idiots, Marshal James notes. Now I know who you are, but you can't go using your real name out there. After all, you are dead in California. He removes a small sheaf of papers from his vest pocket. The imprint of birth certificate is apparent on the foremost, while the other official-looking envelopes can be seen atop others. Don't worry, none about people checking up on you. By the time they pry these from my fingers and figure out their faults, your 4 years are be up. Just don't run for office afterward, he says wryly, then taps the end of a gold-clipped pen. Now, let's get your working name. Well, I guess I'm going... well, we are going to be a Mr. Let's see... your forename? Logan Haas. I'd like to honor my Indian heritage. I'd like to honor my Indian heritage. Renaming is not something done in a basement. Let's do it. Go with that. Not something done in a basement. Well, you can't. Someone might recognize it. Marshal James notes. You are lucky that you look more Mexican than Indian as it is. No sense calling attention to your race if it'll just get trouble for you. I'm of the river people, and I demand to use my name. I am of the basin wanderers, and I will use my own name. You're right, besides people would probably just call me something else anyway. Let's go with the basin wanderers. A Tongva, by any other name, is still a Tongva, Marshal James notes. Just don't keep reminding people about that. Some get twitchy around Indians, and you'll have enough people shooting at you out there. Never mind. Okay. Let me write it down. There we go. Wouldn't have chosen that one, Marshal James notes, as he takes the pen back. He sorts through any papers and makes several additional notations before returning to the first of them. Anyhow, surname Slaughter. Milton. Reynolds. The marshal takes his papers back and glances at the name you scribbled. Now, tell me a bit more about yourself. Marshal James Broads even as he writes. I knew you had the usual rough upbringing. Okay. I once rode bareback from one end of the state to the other. I learned to use a bow and then a rifle since I could crawl. I got into more scrapes than I can recall. Yeah. That's interesting, Marshal James says laconically, but I expect that you didn't have time for regular schooling. Let's see, I couldn't cite you white man's law or how it's supposed to work, nor do I much care for it. Yes, there was no schooling, for I learned to hate the white man's subtle words. See, I've never been at ease with pistols. Of course I didn't. I've known plenty of marshals who have the same problem. Just go with your gut and make friends with someone smart out there. Once the scribbling is done, he sets aside the pen and takes a glance at his handiwork. Now then, Mr. Malcolm Reynolds, shall I lay out the troubles of Lander County for you? Sure, I've got time. Tell me everything that is involved here. Well, Nevada ain't what you'd call populous. The first white man to take gander at the parched deserts and high mountains was Francisco Garces, back in 1770-something. He was a missionary and Spanish. Did a lot of exploring when he wasn't praying. The man found the Mojave and the Grand Canyon both. But the Spaniards were more interested in California than a stretch of parched earth, so they didn't do near to nothing with it for a long while. Then came the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo back in 1848, when Mexico gave up big swaths of territory in exchange for peace with America. Back then, Nevada was called Washoe after one of them Indian tribes. But only the mountain men ever saw more than a lick of it. That changed when the Mormons started carving out niches for wagons headed west around 1851. Good work, Dad. You changed the whole idea of crossing the frontier. You didn't have to empty your pockets to get on a boat for California anymore. But that's all Nevada were for a decade. Just a place to roll your wagon through. No reason to stay. At least until Comstock started silver mining. Thousands came out, mainly from California. And then someone discovered gold near Aurora, and so the rush was on. In 1861, Nevada became a territory. Of course, in 61, the war between the states also got started. I'm sure you heard all about the North versus South, Union versus the Confederacy, blue versus gray, brother against brother. I've got some kin back in Kansas that got elbow deep in blood, and I've got to tell you, I'm glad that didn't spill out here. Least weighs not more than a few drops. Anyway, despite the war, people kept coming to Nevada and settling in. There were about 5,000 by the time the Federals pushed through Nevada statehood. They had to get an exemption for that, but they got it. And so the state of Nevada was born in the midst of terrible, bloody war back east. As you might expect, most in Nevada cast their votes for Lincoln. Shame about what happened to the man. Anyway, the war ended and the trickle of settlers became a deluge. Some just come to Prospect and get rich enough to go elsewhere, but enough have struck around that Nevada's now got about 40,000 souls. That's about 1 per square mile, assuming the border adjustment goes through. Bit of strange politics that they are shifting the Nevada border away east at Utah's expense. Something about the meridians and such that I don't rightly understand. Surveyors might know more, but that's never mind. Right, now silver and gold are both having another rush and the prospectors are like to let slip their findings in whatever town happens to be near. Elko's the biggest, but her sheriff keeps things well in line. Galena ain't so bad, nor is Kingston or Alpen Falls. No, I expect you'll have to make your mark in places like Preston Springs, where the law stays a bit when cowboys come to play. Now you might note that I ain't said much about the Indians. Well, I should have. The Shoshone around your parts are on the warpath, and there have been raids all over the place. It's gotten so bad that the army is talking about building a fort right quick to try and suppress those reds. I expect they will too. There's more than enough veterans from the war between the states walking around following the surrender, north or south. It don't matter when it's Indians they are fighting. Maybe you can talk to the Shoshones some. I'd hope so, because it ain't like they'll just quiet down and go away. They know how that worked with the other tribes back east. They are fired up, armed, and worst of all, smart about things. They pick their targets carefully, cause some hell, and then get on out before the cavalry shows up. That brings us to the big thing. The railroad is coming on through Lander County, and it's coming in a hurry. As soon as Central Pacific finishes the tunnels through the Sierra Mountains, they are going to start on through Nevada. From the east, the Union Pacific Railroad has work crews laying track through Nebraska and I think Wyoming territory. Once the two companies link up in Utah, this nation will have its first ever transcontinental rail line. It used to be 3 ways to get to California. You can sail around South America, that takes 6 months, and it ain't a stroll down the boardwalk. You could land in Central America and make your way over the isthmus there to the Pacific and hope to find a ship headed on up. Faster that, but there's all sorts of sickness in the jungles that might shave a good deal for more than 3 months of your life. Lastly, you could go overland. Like I said, there's a few trails and roads now thanks to the Mormons, but wagons ain't cheap, and out in the wild there's 100 and more dangers waiting to descend. California might be the next paradise on Earth, but it's plenty hard getting here. The railroad will change all that. It won't take 6 months to cross from east to west. It will take scarcely a week. That goes for goods as well as people too. Prices will go down, which means more can afford to come and settle across the land. And all it'll take is the laying of iron rails. But if that untamed county ain't quiet, if the surveyors and graders start getting killed, then the one thing that might stitch together the two halves of this nation might not happen. Can't think of anything worse than that, mainly because so many have sunk so much sweat, blood and treasure into seeing it through that everyone in America might as well pull the stitches from their pockets. That's part of the reason I'm recruiting low fruit from strange trees. I need London County settled, leastways enough for a rail line. Marshal James gives you a considering glance. I hope you do better than previous marshals, and spare me the cost of a pine box. The radiance of the morning drives out the cold from your bones as you step out. Better than a pool of panther juice, it swats you and the whole San Francisco in a golden light. Even the hanging scaffold empty now, doesn't look quite so terrifying. The guy can't help but smile because just a little while ago, you didn't think you'd get to see it again. Last thing, Marshal James says as he steps before you. The brim of his hat threatens to blot out the happy sun. A bit of tin flashes in his powerful fingers as he affixes the marshal's badge. There you are, nice and legal. That is, if you affirm. I swear to uphold the laws of Nevada, serve the public and protect the innocent. I so swear. You are now a professional marshal. Pending the paperwork, Marshal James says agreeably. So, let's get you on your way. And remember, I'll be looking after your family back here. I'll even let them know I thought you killed Thomas Upton in legal self-defense. But we did. The rest of the day is a blur as you ride away from San Francisco on a borrowed saddle. By evening, you reach a lonely hotel across from an idle train station. Waiting in a room under the name Malcolm Reynolds is a bundle of your belongings. But even those familiar items can't help you settle in when night comes. Your dreams are disjointed mess filled with roaring lions and white wall of furious water that utterly engulfs you. It is almost a relief when the distant blast of a steam whistle wakens you at dawn. Your journey to Nevada begins by being whisked down iron rails. The boxy black steam engine sucks rhythmically as it pulls both freight and passenger cars along at a speed that no horse can match. Or at least not for long. The engine drives you steadily eastward, pausing briefly at towns and villages along the way. Just out the window are men in bowler hats and tidy trim suits. Cowboys in long dusters and farmers in rough wool shirts. A few women too, from sunburned madras in calico to little girls in pigtails and sundresses. And they make it official. California is no longer the frontier. Even the flyspeck coaling and watering station out in the middle of nowhere have a dispatch office now. In a few months there will be little villages all along the line. Along one stretch, the iron road has been laid straight through a sprawling forest whose tree trunks are 6 or more feet across. No doubt the trestles below are made from the same wood. Before long, the engine labors up a steady incline in the snowy-peaked mountains that swiftly dominate everything except the sky. Here, the tracks round bends just a stone's throw from deep gorges. Time and again, the steam engine plunges through tunnels that have been laboriously cut through the mountainsides. The sun hangs high overhead and slowly broils the land. The train's engine ignores that as it spews out black ash and cinders as it labors toward white-capped mountains filled to the brim with spring snow. Somewhere far ahead, beyond the reach of rails and down twisting, turning wagon trails out past the ranges of Sierra lies Preston Springs and your marshal's office. The steam engine gives a relieved shock as it slows. The hiss of brakes rises up and then you see the end of the line. Here lies a muddy sprawling camp of men. Stacks of iron rails and wooden ties wait in high piles to be taken on around an imposing summit and laid down. Only a few solid buildings can be seen. Most are either creaky barns or coal casements. Otherwise, it's a sea of tents and cook fires, neither of which can completely ward away the mountainous chill. There are Chinese in impudence with their basket hats and simple loose garb at odds with the puffs of locomotive steam. Amongst them you glimpse a smattering of Irishmen, Red Indians, and even a sprinkling of handsome Pacific Islanders, who readily fill up the narrow ways between tents as they scurry about under the guidance of their white-shirted supervisors. You hop down from passenger car, and your boots crunch upon desolate earth beneath. The scent of cinders fades and is replaced with the ripeness of manure, men and beasts. This high up in the mountain, it's hard to catch your breath even when the wind blows strong. Back by the rear cars up, a black-bearded fellow in a red shirt wrenches open a siding of rail car to reveal a small herd of horses and mules. Indeed, one familiar neigh sounds out and you just know that your prize stallion will be ready to canter you on down the ramp. Let's see. Here's a beautiful bay whose lush brown coat is livened by a black mane on legs. His stolid, nearly brick-red sorrel whose white socks perpetually seem to be pulled down. The vibrant, multi-hued pinto's painted composition is set off by startling bright blue eyes. The hardy brown buckskin, dark eyes and hooves soak in the sunlight. The vivid salt and pepper. The hardy brown buckskin. As you wait for things to clear up, the bearded man in the rusty red shirt slips a halter over the head of your steed and begins to guide it down the ramp, right past you into the camp, taking your horse with him. Hey, that's my horse. Let's go with it. What are you trying to pull then? The food? The bearded man says as he glances over. This is my brother's horse sent on over from San Francisco. You are gravely mistaken. The man in red squints over at you but keeps one hand tight on your horse's halter. You want something, stranger? Yeah, you are leading it. Am I? The man says and spits off to the side. He then lowers his voice toward a growl. No man takes that toll with me. The clatter of the camp continues. Men amble to and fro. The scent of baked beans wafts in from somewhere else close by. A hint of dry dust lingers in the air. So, you traveling? You look like you're traveling. Denny asks. Someplace south, maybe? Yes, I'm traveling east. Indian country, Washoe and worse, Denny considers. Desert too, not a lot out. What exactly do you do around here? I'm the lead drover. That means I look after the animals here, sheep and cattle mostly. Oh, horses too and mules. A few chickens too where we got room, he explains. Not as much fun as prospecting, but then I don't have to tighten my belt when I don't find any nuggets. I hate to impose, but do you know the best way through the mountains ahead? Sure dude, any nods agreeably. The best way ahead is to skirt the mountain and ride along the lines as best you can. Our graders have been going at things with fills and thresholds for a ways now. Always keep a big letter lake to your right until you are far from here. After that, there's a pair of mountains that make for fine landmarks. He uses his boot to draw a crude map of what lies ahead. Halfway through, his eyes drift to the revolver riding at your hip. I think I have the grip of my nickel 32. Let the sun glint off my Colt Walker 44. With the shadows playing on my Remington new model 44. Which gun should we have? I think we take the Remington new model 44. The Remington is a long draw of iron, lethal in purpose, easy to swap out whole cylinders too, which is a good thing because sometimes you need to shave down the bullets to get them to fit in the chamber. Penetration is important, and the Remington new model 44 certainly gives that. It is the gun I've always had by my side. Your pack mule laden with grain and gear lopes steadily on behind your brown buckskin. A ways ahead, a bevy of carpenters raise the frame for a roundhouse. Farther along, a work gang of 30 Chinese methodically spike fresh rails while more of their cohorts lay down wooden tiles and fit in ballast to make everything settle properly. Beyond them are busy teams who dig cuts or dump dirt to make fills so the coming track can run steady and level. A distant explosion sounds out, and judging from the rise of dust, the tunneling and grading teams are still miles ahead. And always there are those sidelong glances that come your way when wondering who exactly you are. Swing south east to pick up the stagecoach track that Denny mentioned. Then all I have to do is head for the Twin Tetons. Yeah. Let's go there. You pass by numerous crews. They are mostly Chinese except for the foreman. The men nod your way before resuming their work. Farther ahead you pass by the surveyors who with their blunt bobs and sighting levels methodically stake out the coming rail. Before long those men are all left behind. The barren slopes and dry valleys seem to be the only things around. But after a few days' ride, you finally sight the twin Tetons. Soon afterward, you come across the stagecoach road. Though actually calling it a road is generous. The twin ruts meander through valleys in so lazy a way that they might well have been laid out by a madman. Still, those are wide enough that a stagecoach could follow them even at dusk. A low thunder rises in the distance. Over shoulder you find curled white clouds streaming down the mountains. You left behind like giant fluffy fish scales. A sniff of the air brings with it a scent of storm. Find shelter and wait for it to pass. Let's go with that. Unfortunately, there isn't a lick of shelter to be found in these mountain slopes and narrow valleys, but somewhere down the road there might be a town or cold harbor of some kind. Seek out shelter down the road, head up the mountains to get away from possible flooding, trot down the valley where lightning won't strike, seek out shelter down the road. You ride and ride as fast as you can. Behind you the storm bears down the wall of towering grey clouds, bits of hail begin to fall as you catch sight of this dilapidated building out in the middle of nowhere, an adobe house that has seen better days. Only half of roof remains, but that is more than enough to get you and your animals under cover. Outside, lightning dances on mountaintops and sheets of rain begin to fall. Gusts of wind threaten to send droplets sliding through the myriad cracks in the walls, and that keeps up until the sun begins to set. After a relatively dry night of rest, you set out again in the land transformed. Green shoots and flowers litter the hillsides and ridges as if eager to greet the morning in bursts of brilliant colors. That makes for a pleasant enough ride until you reach a swollen river. This stretch of water might have just been muddy stream yesterday, but right now it is a fast-flowing chocolate serpent that slithers steadily south. Branches, leaves, and few dead mice bob their way along in waters at least 3 feet deep. Not unmanageable, but certainly not a simple trot. Look for a better place to cross. There are only 2 ways to go, either up or down stream. You might as well flip a coin for all the difference you could make. Let's go downstream. Farther along the river, so flow the bank and spread out a bit. Do you feel the water is low enough to simply ride your horse through with the mule following behind? Before noon you are riding east yet again. Days swiftly become weeks as you traverse a desolate country where even a coyote would have to carry a canteen. The whole of it is parched right down to the roots, as if famine had decided to make it home. Only the sparse rivers and streams that cross the land dare to turn the dusty brown land into stretches of green for a time. Time and again you nearly empty your mule's water skins before you reach a place to refill them. A particularly arid stretch tests your limits with dry camp after dry camp. Even the prickly cactus begins to look succulent, but thankfully a bit of green up ahead catches your eye. A little bit of pasture where the grass is long, and that means water nearby. As you consider that, a shot rings out. shot came from a rifle somewhere up ahead. Thankfully, who opened fire wasn't shooting at. You, me. Ride on over that little past and see what their fuss is all about. Sneak in close to the pasture and see what's going on. Yeah, let's go do that. You dismount, loop the reins about the low scrub of a tree and creep closer. There's not a lot of cover, but there really isn't any alternative. The soft lowing of a dozen cattle tells you this isn't a wolf pack or bear. There's no smudge of smoke in the air, and that means no campfire. As you peek over the top, you find a duster-clad figure poised with rifle in hand. The cowboy cuts a narrow silhouette as he takes aim at some distant target. An errant breeze stirs the tail of his coat, and he shifts the barrel over so slightly. A glance finds another fella hiding behind the wedge of slate around which is strewn more than a few pans and screens. The prospector has got a pistol out and cocked. His bristle of bushy beard almost makes him seem like a bear in the rough. It appears to be some kind of standoff is happening, and like as not, it won't anytime soon. Leastways, not before you and your horse die of thirst. Your hardy little mule might make it so, though a small consolation at best. Let's see, we have option to shoot the cowboy or the prospector, or shoot both and let someone else sort it all out. Write down, since they're fixing to shoot each other, they won't bother me or my thirsty steed. Well, let's write down, let's see what happens. Let's not shoot anybody just yet. The sparse scraggle of brush slowly gives you way to tufts of green grass and gnarled trees. Ahead lies a little stream that burbles up seemingly from solid rock. It gathers there in a shallow pool, just below the slate grey stone, and promises cool relief you could grasp with both hands. Clustered near a picturesque watering hole, a dozen or so cattle graze. Amidst them stands a lean rake of a cowboy who steadies his rifle in both hands. His wide-brimmed hat sieves your way and reveals a narrow silhouette, like a mountain-top tree. The tails of his long tan trailcoat lie as still as the grave, as his rifle remains wholly fixed upon something near the bubbling spring. You follow his gaze, find that it leads to the springhead. There a shift of dark cloth flutters in the breeze. A grey-touched prospector, pistol in hand, hides behind just of slate. Behind just a youth of slate. Now the man could be a part bear, with a thick bristle of beard and mustache. At his feet rest the battered pans, picks and screens of the gold-seeking trade. Off to one side of the pool lies a hefty but lifeless calf. A trickle of blood leaks out from its side where a bullet has struck. Good afternoon to you both. The cowboy absently tips the wide brim of his hat, but never takes his eyes off the rocks behind which the prospector is hiding. How do there, sir? I'm sorry to say there's a bit of a dander here, but I'll sort it out soon enough. The hell you will, the prospector calls out from behind his rock. I'll block you and your heifers first if you try anything. Well, not wanting to shoot anybody here just yet. I don't want to make the wrong impression to people. The cowboy looks to you. Stranger, I don't want to shoot anyone. I don't have to. Will you arbitrate? Neither man has moved, and neither seems willing to do so. It is as if they could stay here all day and wait for something to shift. Hear out the cowboy first. The cowboy pushes his hat back and regards you with a squint of sky blue eyes. I'm Ben Carson. I work on the Big Bell Ranch just south of Albion Falls. I knew it. You're one of them desert folks, the prospector calls out almost tauntingly from behind his rock. I'm a brother of the latter day saints, if that's what you mean. The cowboy shrugs off the insult like a duck in the rain. Anyway, we were driving ahead of cattle west when the storm blew up, scattered us some. I'd been gathering strays, brought them down here for a drink. Next thing I know, I hear a gunshot and one of the cows flops. I look over and there's that man with his pistol still smoking. Did you see him shoot? Didn't have to. Like I said, I had the shot and saw him standing there with a smoking pistol. And the herd was shying away from him like he were a fox in a chicken yard. When did you get to the water? Well, like I said, I had laggards, Carson says, and those that were thirstiest couldn't hardly keep up with the rest, so I had to move them along. So your heifers must have come in pretty eager. Yeah, they were thirsty. Did you look in the watering hole first? Cousin scratches his head a moment. No, can't say that I did. I did owing to the fact that I was alone out here. If I got ahead of the herd, I might lose a few strays. Nearly did anyways. So your little herd must have been very thirsty. We'd been without a drink for most of the day, and there were only a few greens for them to chew on. But when they smelled this here water, they led me right to it, Carson explains. Thanks, that's all I need to know from you. Glad you are trying to settle this without more violence, Carson replies as he steps back. The prospector shifts nervously and seems especially eager to tell his side of things. Carson waits patiently with his hand folded before him. Now let's hear the prospector. Up close, the prospector is a stiff bit of sun-weathered rawhide. A tease of white hair salts him up in ears that almost make his bristle of a beard and mustache seem dignified. Both sleeves of a pale brown calico shirt have been rolled up, and there are more than a few patches on his trousers where work has worn through. You want to hear what really happened? The prospector asked. Well, let old Dan Smith tell ya. You are Dan Schmidt? My father used to talk about you back in California. Yeah? Schmidt asks, then cracks a smile. See, there's a lot of folks that came to California around 49, but I'd already been trapping and prospecting my way through the Ruby Mountains here for years. Now, everything's changed. Lots of people are in a damned hurry, including that Mormon fella. That wounded calf, tell me about it. The whole herd was bearing down on me. I tried to turn them from trampling my gear. Didn't work, they were just too thirsty. Why didn't you fire into the air? I've gone against grizzlies, wolves, and even damn mountain lion once. Best way to scare them off is to try and block them dead center so they're scared or make dead. And let me tell you, those deers were just too damn stupid to take the first hint. Carson said he brought his little struggling herd in for watering. That he did, straight in without so much as a holler. By the time I noticed them thundering in, it was too late. Carson tells me you shot on one of his calf. I was standing over it when he rode up. It were the only way to turn the herd from traveling my screens. Didn't work though. They were just too thirsty or stupid. That's all I need to know. Let's take a look. Smith slouches behind the big rock by the watering hole as if he's got all day now that he's gotten his story out of the way. Carson waits. Let's take a look around. A dead calf, a muddy watering hole, and trampled pans and screens. Schmidt must have been panning for gold when all of a sudden a herd of thirsty cattle came crashing down on him. He pulled his pistol and rightly or wrongly shot one of Carson's calves to try to turn the herd aside. Carson didn't do anything criminal though, because he was just bringing his cattle to drink. So let's render a decision as our first decision as a marshal. You present yourself before the two men and indicate you are ready to render a decision. Carson notes the gleam of your thin star tuck into your coat and settles back confidently. Schmidt follows the cowboy's eyes and gives a little sigh when he's alight upon your badge. Neither of you are at fault. Both men stare blankly at you. Schmidt fired in self-defense and Carson can't be blamed for what his cattle did. But the calf is dead, and it ate even mine, and my pants and pains are all torn up, Schmidt, all but the owls. I just got good steak now. I've got to thin up again. Law and order slightly decreases. Gentlemen, I'm of course going to have to charge you both a fee for all this. Now then, I'm going to waive my usual fee for arbitration. A silver lining at last, Carson nods wryly. More like copper or iron, Smith replies. Honor increased. Carson looks over at Smith and ruminates a moment. I do feel like I've done you wrong with them pants. Darn right you do, Smith answers with a grumble. Things are settled, but your journey continues. Well, invite both men to ride with me. I suppose I could ride with you pathway at least, Carson muses. Preston Springs ain't what you'd call a friendly town. Who wants friendly when you can have lively, Smith puts in. Course, I'd only ride in with friends and that ain't Mr. Reynolds. The prospector tips his hat to you both and sets to gathering up the contents of his gathered pack. Carson rounds up his cattle together, and together you drive the heifers on. It takes days, but those pass by quickly in his company. By cook fire, or riding alongside, he always has a kind word when things are smooth and advice when they get rough. Riding in the mountains can be a thing all its own, Carson relates as you eye a particularly annoying ridge. Up is easier for a horse. They leap and lunge all the way to the top. Down though, that gets tricky. If they get off balance, then like as not, you'll both spill and bad. Best thing to do, other than making certain you have your saddle set just so, is to let the horse have its head. He knows what he's doing, so don't try to force him on a path you think is right. Riding greatly increased. Excellent. Come one morning, you see civilization in the distance. A cluster of sharp edges where everything before had been curved and round. 24 low buildings lie in a valley between mountains. Preston Spring at last. the end of chapter 1, and unfortunately shall be the end of my stream for tonight, since I have to get up early tomorrow. So yes,